Have you ever noticed how some people barely say a word, yet somehow everyone listens, while others speak endlessly, clarify everything, defend every viewpoint, and still manage to make the room feel heavier? Even though the intelligence level is identical, the opportunities are identical, but the impact is completely different. And the difference isn't confidence or charm, it's emotional intelligence, the quiet kind, the kind most people assume they possess, until life slowly proves otherwise. Because genuine emotional intelligence isn't loud, it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't perform well on social platforms. It appears in small, nearly invisible behaviors, the kind you only recognize when they're missing. And I learned this the difficult way because I once believed emotional intelligence meant staying composed, being agreeable, handling situations maturely. But it didn't. I reacted too quickly. I spoke too much when I felt misunderstood. I believed explaining myself would fix everything. And instead, it silently cost me trust, strained connections, and opportunities I didn't even realize I was losing. Not because I lacked intelligence, but because I didn't know how to manage my emotional reactions in real time. And that's when something uncomfortable clicked. Emotional intelligence is not about controlling emotions, but about refusing to let emotions decide who you become in a given moment. Because emotionally intelligent people don't respond instantly, not because they're uncertain or passive, but because they understand a harsh truth that your first reaction is usually your ego speaking. So when someone challenges them, interrupts them, or says something triggering, they pause. 6 seconds, one breath, just enough space to choose a response instead of firing a reflex. And according to the American Psychological Association, that brief pause alone can reduce emotional reactivity by more than 60%. That's not self-help. That's biology. Low EQ reacts, high EQ observes. They still experience the anger, the irritation, the tension. They simply don't give it the steering wheel, and over time they learn something else that separates them even further. They don't need to win, they don't need to be right, and they don't need to be understood immediately. Because holding their internal axis matters more than dominating the moment. And in a world addicted to instant reactions, the person who doesn't rush quietly becomes the most powerful one in the room. Because intentional silence is grounding and intimidating at the same time, and those same people read the room without making it about themselves. While most people walk into a space asking how they fit in, emotionally intelligent people ask what's happening here and how they can contribute without disrupting it. They notice tone shifts, discomfort behind polite smiles, energy changes before words catch up. But they don't weaponize that awareness by saying, "Are you mad at me?" or "Is something wrong with me?" or redirecting the moment back toward themselves. Because that isn't empathy, that's emotional hijacking. High EQ is attunement, not self-centering. They adjust quietly, lower their volume, slow their pace, give space, no spotlight required. And they aren't afraid of silence either, because most people fill silence out of fear. Fear of judgment, awkwardness, or failure. So they over-explain, ramble, and talk themselves into weaker positions, while high EQ people understand that silence makes people reveal themselves. That in conversations, negotiations, and conflict, silence creates psychological safety, something Harvard Business Review has repeatedly confirmed, because when you don't rush to speak, you appear grounded, confident, and open to depth even if your heart is racing inside. Silence isn't emptiness, it's space. And space is power, which is why emotionally intelligent people also ask different questions. While most conversations stay on autopilot with "What do you do?" or "Busy lately?" they ask what's been taking up most of your mental energy, or what are you quietly excited about, or what's been harder than you expected, not to be liked, but to understand. Because as Stephen Covey said, most people listen to, reply not to understand. And high EQ people listen like, "Your answer truly matters," because it does. And contrary to another popular myth, they aren't calm all the time either. They feel anger, jealousy, anxiety, frustration. The difference is they regulate rather than suppress. Because suppression pretends everything is fine, while regulation notices the emotion, understands the reason, and chooses a response that doesn't make it everyone else's responsibility. So when someone cuts them off in a meeting, they don't explode or implode. They simply say, "I'd like to finish my point." No drama, no resentment, no emotional leakage. Because as Brené Brown explains, when you numb painful emotions, You numb positive ones too. And emotionally intelligent people don't numb. They transform fear into strategy, hurt into boundaries, frustration into focus. And they also don't make everything about themselves, because when you share a struggle and someone immediately responds with their own story, the moment quietly shifts away from you. And high EQ people resist that urge. They hold space without inserting themselves. They don't interrupt, compare, or compete for emotional relevance. They're comfortable not being the main character. Because as psychologist Michael Formica said, listening is a form of love. And when someone listens without fixing or redirecting, it sends a powerful message that you matter. And I'm here, which is rare and deeply attractive. And finally, the ultimate test of emotional intelligence is the ability to disagree without disrespect. Because high EQ people can say, I see it differently, or here's another angle, or I disagree with this part, but I hear your point, without making you feel small. They separate ideas from identity, avoid sarcasm, personal attacks, and ego games. And a 2022 UC Berkeley study found that teams with high emotional intelligence resolve conflict 40% faster, not by avoiding tough conversations, but by navigating them without ego. Because high EQ doesn't eliminate conflict, it makes you conflict resilient. And when you step back and look at it all, emotional intelligence isn't a personality trait. It's a skill, a practice, a series of small, daily choices. You don't need to be an extrovert, naturally calm, or likable. You need awareness, curiosity, restraint, and courage. Because emotional intelligence isn't about being liked, it's about being trusted. So here's the challenge. Pick one behavior, just one. And try it today in a real conversation with a real person, even if it feels awkward, especially if it feels awkward. Because awareness without action is performance, but awareness with action is transformation. And if this made you pause, reflect, or recognize yourself, subscribe, because we're just getting started.